most people will never witness it. Most people will never even recognize it when it happens right in front of them, because it does not arrive with noise. It does not announce itself with drama or declaration. It comes the way dawn comes slowly, then all at once. And by the time you notice, the darkness is already gone. This is what happens when an empath reaches Sophia, and once you understand what Sophia truly is, you will never look at a quietly powerful person the same way again. Sophia is an ancient Greek word. It means wisdom, but not the kind of wisdom that comes from reading books or accumulating information. Sophia is the wisdom that is forged inside suffering. It is the knowledge that can only be earned by walking through fire and choosing, aci every stepi, not to become the fire. It is what Machiavelli understood when he wrote that the greatest power a person can possess is the power that others cannot see coming. And in the empath, who has reached Sophia, that power is absolute. For most of their lives, empaths are the most giving people in any room. They feel everything. They absorb the emotional weight of others as naturally as breathing. They invest deeply, love completely, and often sacrifice themselves for connections that do not come close to deserving them. They are the ones who stay too long, try too hard, and believe too much in the potential of people who are never going to change. This is not a flaw. It is the raw material of something extraordinary, because the empath, who has been through enough, who has given everything and watched it be taken without gratitude, who has loved deeply and been met with indifference, who has stayed silent about their own pain to hold space for everyone else, that empath is being shaped into something the world is not prepared for. Sophia is what happens when the shaping is complete. And when an empath reaches it, 8 specific things begin to happen that most people around them will struggle to explain. The first thing that happens is that they stop performing peace and begin living it. There is a version of calm that is performed. It is the smile held in place when the chest is tight. It is the measured voice used when the mind is screaming. Most empaths know this performance intimately. They have practiced it for years in rooms where their real feelings were not welcome. But Sophia ends the performance, because the empath no longer needs to manage how they appear. They have found something real beneath the roles they were playing, a stillness that does not depend on the behavior of others, a peace that cannot be taken away by someone else's chaos. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who appears calm while others lose their composure holds all the power in the room. The empath who has reached Sophia does not appear calm. They are calm, and the difference is everything. The second thing that happens is that their silence becomes a strategy without them trying to make it one. In the years before Sophia, the empath's silence was often a wound. It was the quiet of someone who had tried to speak and been dismissed too many times. It was withdrawal born of exhaustion. But after Sophia, silence transforms entirely. It becomes discernment. The empath no longer speaks to fill space, or to manage tension, or to make others comfortable at the cost of their own energy. They speak when speaking serves truth. They remain quiet when quiet is more powerful. And this shift, this deliberate, unhurried relationship with words, unnerves people who are used to controlling others through emotional provocation. You cannot destabilize someone who has already chosen stillness. You cannot manipulate someone who is no longer afraid of the silence you are using as a weapon. The third thing that happens is that they develop an almost supernatural ability to see through people. Machiavelli was fascinated by the capacity to read human nature without illusion. He believed that most people move through the world seeing what they want to see, projecting their own desires and fears onto others, and being consistently surprised when reality does not match their expectations. The empath before Sophia was guilty of this in one specific way. They saw too much good in people who did not deserve it. They extended charity to those who mistook it for weakness. But Sophia strips away the last of those projections. The empath, who has reached it, looks at a person and sees clearly, not cynically, not harshly, but with a precision that cannot be fooled. They see the gap between what someone says and what they mean. They see the motives beneath the gestures. They see the person behind the performance. And because they see it, they are never again caught off guard by it. The fourth thing that happens is that they become impossible to manipulate. This is the one that shocks people most. Empaths have a reputation for being easily manipulated, for being the target of narcissists, energy vampires, and those who mistake kindness for naivety. And before Sophia, that reputation has some truth to it. Not because empaths are weak, but because their desire to see the best in people made them vulnerable to those who exploited that desire. Sophia closes that vulnerability permanently, not by making the empath cold or suspicious, but by making them clear. They no longer need to believe that someone is good in order to treat them with dignity. They no longer require a reason to trust their own perception. When something feels wrong, they do not talk themselves out of that feeling to avoid conflict. They simply act on what they know. And a person who acts from inner knowing rather than external approval cannot be moved by guilt, charm, or pressure. Machiavelli would recognize this immediately. He called it vert, the quality of a person who cannot be controlled by fortune because they have already mastered themselves. The fifth thing that happens when an empath reaches Sophia is that their empathy becomes selective rather than automatic. This is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of this awakening. People who knew the empath before sometimes feel its effects and interpret it as coldness. They say the empath has changed. They say they used to be warmer, more available, more willing to hold space for everything and everyone. And they are right. The empath has changed. But what looks like coldness from the outside is something else entirely from the inside. It is the empath finally understanding that empathy is not an obligation. It is a gift. And like any gift of great value, it belongs in the hands of those who will honor it. The empath who has reached Sophia still feels deeply. They still notice the emotional undercurrents in every room they enter. But they are no longer compelled to respond to all of it. They choose where their empathy flows. And that choice, that quiet, deliberate withholding of emotional energy from those who would drain it, is one of the most powerful acts a person can perform. The sixth thing that happens is that they stop needing to be understood and start being impossible to ignore. There is an irony at the heart of the empath's journey. For years, they tried desperately to be understood, to translate their inner world into language that others could receive, to explain their sensitivity in ways that would not be dismissed, to prove that what they felt was real and valid and worthy of acknowledgement. And they were often met with indifference or ridicule or the particular cruelty of being told they were too much. Sophia ends the need for that validation entirely. The empath no longer requires your understanding. They are complete without it. And, paradoxically, this completeness, this absolute lack of neediness, makes them magnetic in a way that their years of striving never did. Machiavelli observed that the person who no longer needs anything from the room commands the room. The empath who has reached Sophia walks into a space and something shifts. People feel it before they can name it. It is the presence of someone who has nothing to prove and nowhere to be other than exactly where they are. The seventh thing that happens is that they begin to use their knowledge of human nature with precision and intention. Before Sophia, the empath's ability to read people was something that happened to them. It was often overwhelming, too much information, too much feeling, no framework for what to do with any of it. But wisdom creates structure. After Sophia, the empath knows not only what they perceive, but what to do with what they perceive. They understand which truths to speak aloud and which to hold quietly. They understand when to act and when to wait. They understand that the most strategic move is sometimes the one that looks like no move at all. This is the intersection where empathy meets Machiavellian intelligence, not in cruelty or manipulation, but in the mastery of timing, the economy of words, and the patience to let the truth reveal itself rather than forcing it into the light prematurely. The empath who has reached Sophia is not playing games. They have simply stopped being the only one who is not playing. The eighth and final thing that happens is the most profound of all. The empath who reaches Sophia stops trying to save people and starts building a world that does not require saving. For years the empath was drawn to broken things, to people in pain, to situations where their particular gift, their ability to feel what others could not articulate, seemed most needed. This is not a flaw. It is a calling that had not yet found its proper form. But Sophia reorients the calling entirely. The empath comes to understand that pouring themselves into people who are not ready to receive that gift is not compassion. It is self-abandonment dressed in compassionate clothing. Real wisdom knows the difference between helping someone grow and enabling someone to remain small. Real wisdom knows when to extend a hand and when to simply stand as an example of what is possible. And so the empath who has reached Sophia begins to build. They build relationships rooted in reciprocity. They build environments that reflect their actual values rather than their old fears. They build a life that does not depend on anyone else's growth for its foundation. And in doing so, they become something Machiavelli would have recognized with deep respect, a person whose power is entirely their own, not borrowed from the approval of others, not sustained by the need to be needed, but rooted in the rarest soil of all, genuine self-knowledge, hard-won and unshakable. This is what Sophia looks like from the inside. Quiet, clear, unhurried. A person who has been through enough to know exactly who they are and exactly what they will and will not allow into the space of their life. They are not angry. They are not bitter. They are not seeking revenge on everyone who mistook their kindness for weakness. They have simply arrived somewhere. Most people will spend their entire lives looking for and never find. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But he was writing for princes in a world built on force. The empath who has reached Sophia has discovered something older and more enduring than that. They have discovered that the person who is truly known, who knows themselves completely, who no longer needs your validation or your understanding or your approval, is neither feared nor simply loved. They are respected in the deepest possible sense. The kind of respect that cannot be manufactured or demanded. The kind that arises naturally, instinctively, in the presence of someone who is completely and unapologetically themselves. When an empath reaches Sophia, they do not become someone new. They become, for the first time, fully who they always were. And the world, whether it understands this or not, feels the difference immediately. Your awakening is just beginning. Like, share, subscribe to Mind of the Alpha.